Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Today, we are looking to start our week with some wisdom, some encouragement from the Psalms and from the Proverbs. We're looking at Psalm 78 today and Proverbs chapter 22. Real quick, before I get into the details of today's study, quick reminder, this podcast is 100% listener supported. If you're being blessed and you want to support the podcast, please go to scriptureandprophecy.com, and there's a donate and support tab at the top, or the links are in the description if you're listening on a platform like YouTube. Today, Psalm 78 is a longer psalm than what we're typically used to. We're looking at 72 verses, and it's really a historical narrative. Kind of showing, both the great mercies of God that he bestows upon Israel, but also kind of the rebellion and the stiff-neckedness and the great sins of Israel that have provoked him. And so it's really a historical recall of all of that. But the way it begins is calling its readers or its listeners to give ear to God's law. Let me start by reading this short little paragraph of commentary from Matthew Henry, because it kind of sets the tone for these first 10 verses, first 8 verses, and then verses 9 moving forward deal with kind of the historical lesson. Here's what he says. He says, "These are called dark and deep sayings, because they are to be carefully looked into. The law of God was given with a particular charge to teach it diligently to their children, that the church may abide forever. Also that the providences of God, both in mercy and in judgment, might encourage them to conform to the will of God. The works of God much strengthen our resolution to keep his commandments. Hypocrisy is the high road to apostasy. Those that do not set their hearts right will not be steadfast with God. Many parents, by negligence or wickedness, become murderers of their own children. But young persons, though they are bound to submit in all things lawful, must not obey sinful orders or copy sinful examples." There's one little sentence that I want to read again that I'm sure you caught. Hypocrisy is the high road to apostasy. Hypocrisy is the high road to apostasy. I love that. And it's just so true. Let's have a look at this morning's psalm. Open up your hearts and see what the Word of God has to say to you. Let's begin. Verse 1. "Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, showing to the generation to come the praises of the Lord, and his strength, and his wonderful works that he hath done. For he established a testimony in Jacob, and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should raise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in God, and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and might not be, as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their hearts aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with God." Please note, I'm not going to interrupt moving forward to the rest of this psalm because it's a long one, but I think it's worth noting what's being said here. And I think it relates to today. He's warning the importance of teaching the law and teaching God's commandments to your children, lest they become like the previous generation, which was stubborn and stiff-necked and brought judgment on themselves. He says that they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn, rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with God. And I think that's where we are in the Western world today. A whole generation was brought up over the last 50 years or so who've had no regard for God or the things of God and the commands of God. And as a result, our moral decline has been unthinkably bad, unimaginably bad. And so what we should be doing now as a response is diligently teaching the ways of God to the youth, so that they might be a generation that comes up that remembered God, remembers his commandments, remembers his way, and as a result, the whole world is better off. But when you don't do that, you get what we have now. Or when you have a casual attitude about it, and you raise children and you have a casual attitude about God and about worship and all of these things, then you end up with, like what Matthew Henry says, hypocrisy, which is the high road to apostasy, which we see being demonstrated right now. Just a thought. All right. Let's get to the historical narrative for the rest of this psalm. Verse 9. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back in the day of battle. They kept not the covenant of God and refused to walk in his law, and forgot his works and his wonders that he had showed them. Marvelous things did he in the sight of their fathers, and in the land of Egypt and in the field of Zoan. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand as a heap. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. He clave the rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink as out of the great depths. He brought streams also out of the rock, and caused waters to run down like rivers. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. And they tempted God in their hearts by asking meat for their lust. Yea, they spake against God. They said, Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, the smoke, the rock, that the waters gushed out, and the streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide flesh for his people? Therefore the Lord heard this, and was wroth. So fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel. Because they believed not in God, and trusted not in his salvation, though he had commanded the clouds from above, and opened the doors of heaven. And he rained down manna upon them to eat, and he had given them the corn of heaven. Please note, I promised I wouldn't interrupt, but I just feel like I have to point this out. You know, the scriptures say it's impossible to please God without faith. Like that's the thing that pleases him. What's the psalm when as it's referring to history, what's it say that caused God to be wroth? It was their lack of believing in his ability to provide for them. Their lack of trust, their lack of faith, right? They're asking the question, can he furnish a table for us in the wilderness? Can he provide us bread out here? Can he provide meat for us out here? And it says, therefore the Lord heard this and was wroth. So fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger came against Israel, because they believed not in God and trusted not in his salvation. Continuing on, though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven, and had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them corn of heaven, man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. He caused an east wind to blow in the heaven, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He rained flesh also upon them as dust, and feathered fowls like the sand of the sea. And he let it fall in their midst of their camp, round about their habitations. So they did eat and were well filled, and he gave them their own desire. They were not estranged from their lust, but while their meat was yet in their mouths, the wrath of God came upon them, and slew the fattest of them, and smote down the chosen men of Israel. For all this they sinned still, and believed not for the wondrous works. Therefore their days did he consume in vanity, and their years in trouble. And when he slew them, when they sought him, they returned and inquired early after God. And they remembered that God was their rock, and that the high God their Redeemer. Nevertheless, they did flatter him with their mouth, and they lied unto him with their tongues, for their heart was not right with him, neither were they steadfast in his covenant. But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity, and destroyed them not. Yea, many a time turned his anger away, and did not stir up all his wrath. For he remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passes away and cometh not again. How oft did they provoke him in the wilderness, and grieve him in the desert? Yea, they turned back and tempted God, and limited the Holy One of Israel. They remembered not his hand, nor the day when he delivered them from the enemy, how he had wrought his signs in Egypt, and his wonders in the field of Zoan, and had turned their rivers into blood, and their floods that they could not drink. He sent divers sorts of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs which destroyed them. He gave also their increase unto the caterpillar, and their labor unto the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamore trees with frost. He gave up their cattle also to the hail, and their flock to the hot thunderbolts. He cast upon them in the fierceness of his anger, wrath and indignation and trouble, by sending evil angels among them. He made a way to his anger. He spared not their soul from death, but gave their life over to the pestilence, and smote all the firstborn in Egypt, and the chief of their strength in the tabernacles of Ham. But he made his own people to go forth like sheep, and he guided them in the wilderness like a flock. And he made them on safety, so that they feared not, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. He brought them to the border of a sanctuary, even to his mountain, which his right hand had purchased. He cast out the heathen also before them, and divided them in inheritance by line, and by many tribes of Israel to dwell in their tents. Yet they tempted and provoked the Most High God, and kept not his testimonies, but turned back and dealt unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow. For they provoked him to anger with their high places, and moved him to jealousy with their graven images. When God heard this, he was wroth, and greatly abhorred Israel, so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent which he placed among men, and delivered his strength into the captivity of his glory, into the enemy's hand. He gave his people over also unto the sword, and was wroth with his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given to marriage. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. For the Lord awakened as one out of sleep, like a mighty man that shouted by reason of wine. And he smote his enemies in the hinder parts, and put them to perpetual reproach. Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Zion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like high places, like the earth which he hath established forever. He chose David also his servant, and took from him the shepherd or the sheepfolds. From following the ewes, great with young, he brought him to feed Jacob his people, and Israel his inheritance. So he fed them according to their integrity of heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. And that, my friends, is Psalm 78. Definitely a longer one, huh? But I really like that beginning. It's really speaking to me this morning, the importance of making sure you're raising up this generation, your kids, your grandkids, understanding and knowing God. Having the fear of the Lord. Teach them to obey his ways and his commandments, so that they don't end up like this current generation, full of hypocrisy and apostasy. All right, let's open up our hearts again, and let's look and try to get some wisdom from the Proverbs. We're looking at Proverbs chapter 22, warnings and instructions continued. Let's begin. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. The rich and poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. By humility, the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are the way of the froward. He that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Please note, that sounds familiar to what the Psalms just taught us, right? Like, you got to teach your children these things. You got to raise them up knowing these things. And then when they're old, they'll remember it. Verse 7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is a servant to the lender. He that soweth iniquity shall reap vanity, and the rod of his anger shall fail. He that hath a bountiful eye shall be blessed, for he giveth of his bread to the poor. Cast out the scorner, and contention shall go out, yea, strife and reproach shall cease. He that loveth pureness of heart, for the grace of his lips the king shall be his friend. The eyes of the Lord preserve knowledge, and he overthroweth the words of the transgressor. The slothful man saith, There is a lion without, I shall be slain in the streets. The mouth of a strange woman is a deep pit. He that is abhorred of the Lord shall fall therein. Let that be a lesson, really, to all men and to young men. Do not fall for the lust of a strange woman, the woman who's not your wife, the woman who's not the woman that God had given you from your youth. It's a deep pit. The mouth of a strange woman is a deep pit. He that is abhorred of the Lord shall fall therein. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. He that oppresses the poor to increase has riches, and he that giveth to the rich shall surely come to want. Bow down thy ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply thy heart unto my knowledge. For it is a pleasant thing if thou keep them within thee, they shall withal be fitted in thy lips. That thy trust may be known, that thy trust may be in the Lord. I have made known to thee this day, even to thee. Have not I written to thee excellent things in counsel and in knowledge, that I might make thee know the certainty of the words of truth, that thou mightest answer the words of truth to them that send unto thee? Rob not the poor because he is poor, neither oppress the afflicted in the gate. For the Lord will plead their cause, and spoil the souls of those that spoiled them. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways, and get a snare to thy soul. You've heard me say this, it's kind of just so basic, but it's something that was told to me so much as a youth. You are who you surround yourself with. Sounds cliche, but it's just true. You are who you surround yourself with. Do not think that you can have friends that behave in a certain manner and it not rub off on you. Make no friendship with an angry man. With a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. And I would say you could insert any sin there. Hang out with a lustful man, before you know it, you'll be lusting after women. Hang out with people who have filthy mouth, it won't be long, you have a filthy mouth. Hang out with people who are drunkards, it won't be long, you'll be a drunkard. Be not thou one of them that strike hands, or of them that sureties for debts. If thou hast nothing to pay, why should he take away thy bed from under thee? Remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. And that is our wisdom from the Proverbs today. And that is the end of our study for this morning. I pray you've been blessed and strengthened to start your week. We've been doing this for so many years. I don't know when I started the Psalms and Proverbs, but I want to say 8 years ago. And this is the one series that we've pretty much kept on the entire time. And so it's a blessing to me personally. That's one of the reasons I like to do it. But it's also a favorite of many of yours. And so I pray that you've been strengthened and encouraged this morning to start your week. Thank you for praying for me. Thank you for those of you who support the podcast. Peace and grace be with all of you. And until next time, God bless.